Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, I always say on this channel, two of the most dangerous weapons in the sport of boxing is a microphone and a camera. You know, it was just recently reported that Oscar De La Hoya, he said that if Canelo were to fight Gennady Golovkin today, it would be a 90-10 split in favor of Canelo Alvarez. My first reaction is with a question. I want you guys to think real hard when I ask you this question. When is the last time you guys seen two fighters on the caliber of a Gennady Golovkin and a Canelo Alvarez, and I'm talking about popularity-wise, where one fighter was getting 90% and the other fighter was getting 10%? You've never seen it before. You've never seen it. I'm not talking about Floyd Mayweather versus Andre Berto or Pacquiao versus Algieri. I'm talking about two fighters that are usually the A side every single time they fight, right? People tried to argue up and down that Gennady Golovkin was the A side against Andre Ward. So how does Gennady Golovkin supposedly go from the A side against Andre Ward to only getting 10% of a purse against Canelo Alvarez? I mean, it's more than obvious what the translation is when you hear Oscar De La Hoya demand something so ridiculous, right? They're obviously telling us that that's way too dangerous of a fight. Canelo will go in there and he would probably lose to someone like Gennady Golovkin, and we can't risk our biggest cash cow losing right now. Now, and after we make about 2 to 3 years worth money off of Canelo, then we could take a risk like that. But right now, Canelo is all we got. And that's what the translation reads. You know, it was something else that Oscar De La Hoya said in that press conference clip that I played earlier on. Actually, I don't think I added that part. But he said in that press conference, he said, you know, I want to make an announcement. Canelo will be fighting in May. And he basically said it could be Golovkin, it could be anyone. But he said, I have to go back and talk to Canelo Alvarez and see what he wants to do. So when you hear him say something like that, it makes you wonder, is he implying that really he wants to make the fight, but Canelo doesn't? I'm just throwing that out there. That's just pure speculation, but it really makes you wonder when he says something like that. You know, it was also reported just recently that Canelo Alvarez plans to fight 3 times this year. If that is the case, can you guys imagine how bad that would make Canelo look? If in 3 fights this year, he doesn't fight Gennady Golovkin, he doesn't fight the best fighter at 154, which is Demetrius Andrade, he doesn't fight Jamal Charlo, Eric Walker, Chris Pearson, then that would clearly suggest that Oscar De La Hoya is not interested in putting on the best fights when it comes to his cash cow, Canelo Alvarez. Out of all of those fights that I just mentioned, there is no other fights that Canelo Alvarez can take that would compare to those opponents that I just mentioned, competition-wise, opposition-wise, dealing with resistance, dealing with adversity. There's really no one else he could really face. I mean, of course, we have the lower tier fighters like Joshua Clottey, who just lost to Gabe Rosado. Then you have Gabe Rosado, who I hear they wanted to fight him next. But it was Team Rosado that basically said they weren't ready for that fight. This whole situation backs Canelo and Golovkin up into a corner where eventually they're going to be forced to step up in competition. Not just by the media, but by the fans. I tell you guys this all the time. If it was up to the media, we would have never gotten Canelo versus Edeslani Lara, because they weren't even bringing it up. The only reason we got that fight is because Edeslani Lara, he jumped on stage while Canelo was doing his post-conference, and Edeslani Lara demanded the fight. And everyone, the whole world, they seen Edeslani Lara call out Canelo Alvarez. It wasn't the media, or at least not the majority of the media, because of course I was reporting it. But my point is, it was not the media that really made this fight come to fruition. It was the fans. It was the social media platforms that made this fight come to fruition. Because fans in Mexico, in Canelo Alvarez's own country, they were putting a lot of pressure on Canelo Alvarez to take this fight. And that strategy worked, because Canelo, he said, you know what, I can't have my own countrymen calling me a coward saying I'm ducking somebody. So credit to Canelo. He took that fight to show that he wasn't afraid to fight Edeslani Lara. Now, even though I and a lot of other people believe that Edeslani Lara won that fight, I still give credit to Canelo for taking a tough fight like that. But we don't live in the past in the sport of boxing. And if there are new challenges in a new year, then you're supposed to take those new challenges. Okay? You can't just say, look who I fought in the past, so I no longer have to fight any dangerous opponents for the rest of my career. Boxing doesn't work that way. In fact, boxing is like any other sport. If you won the Super Bowl 3-4 years ago, it doesn't matter. We want to see if you're going to win it this year. Right? Can you continue to win the Super Bowl? Because I hear some of these Canelo Alvarez fans say, well, look at Canelo Alvarez's resume. Who has a resume like that, et cetera, et cetera. And there's no doubt about it, Canelo has great names on his resume. But the truth of the matter is, the majority of those big names that he faced, he either lost to those guys or it was a controversially close fight that could have went either way. He lost to Floyd Mayweather. The Austin Trout fight was extremely controversial because of the Texas judging, the open scorecards. It was, I believe even Robert Garcia said the fight could have been a draw. Then you got the Edeslani Lara fight, which I already told you, I feel Lara won that fight. A lot of people felt Lara won that fight. I can't think of a fight in the history of boxing where a fighter didn't land hardly any punches to the head, but yet he won the fight. And then for people to say, well, Edeslani Lara, he quote-unquote ran all night. Well, if that's the case, why are you guys arguing that Oscar De La Hoya beat Tito Trinidad? Because if I played a side-by-side video right now, I can guarantee you I can show you rounds where Oscar De La Hoya was moving way more than Edeslani Lara was in this damn Canelo fight. Because if we use that logic, I can give you tons of examples. Why did Manny Pacquiao beat Brandon Rios? He was constantly moving in that fight. Why is Willie Pep considered one of the greatest fighters of all time? There's one round where Willie Pep did nothing but quote-unquote run the entire round without throwing a single punch, and people praise him for that, and he actually won the round, according to the judges. It's very unfortunate that we can't play, or we don't have the copyrights to play video footage of these actual fights. Because if I could play side-by-side clips of fighters you claim you don't like because of how they fight, and then I compare that fighter on the coincidental list to the fighter who has his Hope insurance and play both of those clips, it would completely expose the double standards to a whole nother level. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to expose the double standards one way or the other, like I always do. But I'm just saying, with that type of weapon, once again, that camera footage, decafs would be begging me to take the video down because that would be way too much damn truth for one decaf to handle in one single video. Shit, damn the whole video. It'd be too much to handle in one single clip in the video. Okay? But anyway, once again, Oscar De La Hoya, when he says stuff like, we want to put on the best fights, etc., 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 and then you turn around and you basically say, we're not going to fight Gennady Golovkin unless we get all of the money. Because that's pretty much what he was saying. We're not fighting him unless we get all of the money. Let's just put it this way. It's kind of hypocritical. Okay? I mean, when you have fighters like Keith Thurman fighting against Sean Porter, you have Kovalev, who's planning on trying to fight Adonis Stevens and Andre Ward this year. And Oscar De La Hoya has Canelo Alvarez, and we don't even know if we're going to get Canelo versus Golovkin this year. We know we ain't going to get Canelo versus the fighters on a coincidental list this year that are a threat. So what's really going on? So going back to some of the Canelo Alvarez fans that do defend Canelo not fighting the fighters that I just mentioned this year, and they try to basically say, well, look at who he fought in the past. That's kind of interesting because these are the same fans, and other fans as well, are the ones that complained about Mayweather fighting Andre Ward for his last fight, while Mayweather is 38 years old and has a better resume. I'm talking about a resume where he actually beat the guys, not just them being on your resume, not just opponents, that you could say you fought, but you lost to. No, everyone that Floyd Mayweather fought, he beat them. So once again, it's a huge contradiction when you sit here and you say it's okay for Canelo to fight whoever he wants now because of who he fought in the past. But then you turn around and you want to criticize Floyd Mayweather for fighting Andre Berto after he just beat Manny Pacquiao, the quote-unquote fighter of the decade, the 8-division champion. It's funny because decafs can't even use the excuse that Pacquiao was past his prime, he was this and he was that, because number one, he was considered pound for pound, number two, the best fighter in the world. Number two, there are multiple voting polls where the fans had actually voted and picked Manny Pacquiao to beat Floyd Mayweather. So in other words, going into that fight, the fans had made Floyd Mayweather the underdog when it came to polls that they were doing. And Manny Pacquiao was the favorite. The way I tie this all in with Canelo Alvarez is I want you guys to imagine. Imagine Canelo Alvarez, let's just say just for 2016. Canelo Alvarez, he fights Gennady Golovkin in May. Then he beats Golovkin, right? He beats Golovkin, the guy that he's favored to lose to. He beats him. Just like Mayweather versus Pacquiao, everybody doing these little polls, and 75% of fans, they believe Golovkin wins the fight. Canelo goes in there, he shocks the world, he beats Gennady Golovkin.